Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
So we are moving on to the next stage of the priestly garment, and we are now going to go into quite a lot of detail about the breastpiece. And I confess that if it weren't for the pictures, I would be so lost you have no idea. So I am going to show you the picture of the breastpiece. I'm going to go into the share screen, and hopefully I'm going to see what needs to be seen. All right. This, I think, is a helpful picture. There it is. So there it is in terms of its construction. And I'm going to see if I can enlarge it a little bit. There we go. All right. So what we're talking about now is we're talking about how it gets attached to the priest's ephod, right? So we see this ring over here, and here are these braided cords that are made out of gold. It's actually enlarged quite well, I have to say. And this is what we're talking about as well. Do you see how there are rings here as well? And of course, what's going to happen is this back part is going to be folded up against and create that pocket that I think I already mentioned to you in a previous session. So let me go back to, I do want to show you one other thing. So I'm going to see if I can find it easily. Let's see. Okay, this is, all right. It won't show me the finder. So let's see if I can get to it. Sorry about that. Let's see. Nope, it's not going to let me do it. All right, I'm going to have to stop the share for a second. Now I can see it. All right. Let's see here. There is, oh, here it is. Okay, that's the picture I want to show you. Get that up. All right, so now I'm going to go to a new share and see if I can, that's what I want to show you. This is the ephod, right, as it lays out. And what's so helpful here is, even though it's not in color, which would have been very helpful, we see here the ribbons, right? And see how these ribbons are going to go to the bottom of the choshen, the bottom part of the breastplate. And you can see how they are attached to the ephod right here at the bottom of the shoulder straps. And this belt here that you see is called the cheshev of the ephod, right? Interesting word because lachashov means to think, essentially. And I think that the reason it's called that is because that's the way the ephod is essentially attached to the high priest. So it is the important part of the ephod, otherwise it would just be dangling there. But this way he wraps it around himself. So I'm going to, again, come out of that for a second and go into the Torah Mima. So now we can take a look at it. I'm looking to see if I should do one more picture. Well, I could, here's another, this is helpful, I think. Let's go into that share. This is just showing how the ephod is placed. You can see here how it's on the high priest. This is you can see all of this, correct? You can see the front of how the ephod is attached to the breastplate. Is that correct? I just want to make sure you're seeing it here as well. Good. Yep. Let's see if there are other parts too. No, that's essentially it. So let's see now. Oh, if you look carefully, if you look very carefully, 1 second here. You can see the blue, you see these blue threads? They're the blue ribbons that are attaching to the back part of the breast piece. And that way, as Rashi's going to explain, if the breast piece, the choshen, was only suspended by this part here, it would be waving back and forth against the priest as he's standing, as he's walking along. But this way, it's against both. This is the robe, the ma'il, and it's also attached to the ephod itself, and that way it stays in place. So this is all that's being described now. And as I said, in this case, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Oh, I do have another picture to show you, although we haven't discussed it yet. And that's the robe of the priest, the ma'il. That's the blue part. That's right over here that you're seeing. Here's the entire garment. That's the entire garment. And Harlan was mentioning that if you look at the bottom of it, I have to see if I can do this up. If you look very carefully, you'll see that there's a bell. These are bells. And these threads here are actually here. This is you can see it better here. It's called a pomegranate, a rimon. So it says very clearly that there's to be a bell and a rimon, a bell and a rimon along this lower edge of the ma'il. And that way the priest, when he's walking along, is making a sound. You can hear him tinkling away. And it also talks about the importance of making this border here at the top so that it doesn't fray. These are all details that are actually mentioned in the Torah itself. So
he shall have music wherever he goes.
Yeah, isn't that something? I know. I wonder if that's where there was some inspiration there. Who knows? I agree. I also, on a more serious note, it really means that all the senses were involved when he went into the holy place. That is, so you had the incense altar, right? So the olfactory, you had the site with the menorah, you had the showbread table, so that would be the mouth, right? And then you also had the bells ringing, so that would involve the oral sense as well. So you had that all being involved, that being in the presence of God, of the Holy One, just involved all your senses. So continuing now with the text itself, and I'll do the best I can. There's a lot of Rashi on this, just to show you, because he is doing everything he can to explain this verbally, what we just saw, where a picture just does so much. It just is so hard to visualize. And I'll do the best I can. And I can assure you that if I did not have those pictures, I would have a very hard time visualizing on the basis of Rashi, what Rashi says. But hopefully, having seen those pictures, and I'm sorry I can't have them right next to the text itself so that you can see how it's working out. But hopefully you have some memory of what you just saw. So, for Asita al HaChoshen, so we're going back over this in a way, because we mentioned this in passing in connection with the ephod. But now we're talking about the Choshen, right? So you shall make, and it says al HaChoshen, which means, literally al generally means on, but Rashi understands it as for. You shall make for the breastpiece, shtei tabaot sahav, 2 rings of gold. So I showed you those rings of gold at the on the Choshen. I think that's what he's talking about here, are the rings that were at the top of the breastplate. V'natata et shtei hatabaot. There we go. Yeah, these are the rings that he's talking about. You shall place the 2 rings al shnei tzot hachoshen, on the 2 edges of the breastpiece. Let's take a look and see if there's Rashi on this. Here we go. So al hachoshen, the tzorech hachoshen, he says, for the needs of the breastpiece. Kedei lekavam bo, so I believe he's saying, in order to insert those braided chains into those rings, right? But I think lekavam also can mean, likboa means to affix. In other words, through them, in other words, in it. So the through which to, I think perhaps a better translation would be through which to affix. Well, avam is them, it's a plural, but the bow would refer to the breastplate, and in other words, through them to affix it. So now he goes on to make sure we don't misunderstand what's going on. And it's not, you can't say, you shouldn't be saying, Shetahet Tchilat Asiyatan Alav. Okay, you shouldn't think that literally it means the beginning of their making, the beginning of their fabrication is on it. So let's see. Let me just keep going, and then we can see what sense we can make out of it. She'imkein, because if this were the case, mahu shechozer v'omer. How does it go back and say, "V'natata et shtei hatabaot"? You shall place the two rings. V'halo kvar netunimbo. He says, and I think what it's saying. Okay, so it's ambiguous, right? And it says because they were already placed in it. So what is he referring to here? What's Rashi referring to? Is he trying to suggest that? What exactly does he mean by Tchilat Asiyatan, the beginning of their fabrication? And I'll take a look at Sfaria, at the translation of Sfaria, and see how they handle it, okay? So it says, Haya lo lichtov, okay? In other words, if it meant that this was the beginning, and again, what exactly does he mean by Tchilat Asiyatan Alav? Just really puzzling to me exactly what he's meaning here. Unless he's saying he's trying to support, as I'm trying to meditate and think this through, that he's translated the word al in a little bit of a different way and said it's for their sake and not upon them. And maybe what he's saying is that the alav means on the breastplate, and that somehow they placed there to begin with that. So anyway, let me keep going here, and forgive me. I know this has to be very confusing. So bear with me and see if we can make sense out of this. Okay. So it says, if that were the case, Mahu shechozer v'omer, why would he go back and say, V'natata et shtei hatabaot, and say, and you shall place the two rings? So in other words, it's after. So is he saying that it's after you make the breastpiece, then you place the two rings? V'halo kvar netunim bo, if they were already on it. In other words, if they were made to begin with the fabrication of the breastpiece, then why would it say you should put the rings on it if they're already there? So I think that's what he's trying to say. It should have stated at the beginning of this scriptural passage, you shall make on the edges of the breastpiece, shtei tabaot, two rings, zahav of gold. V'af b'sharsharot tzarich ata liftorchein, and you have to explain this also with regards to the those chains with which it's suspended. So I'm trying to make out exactly what is he trying to say here. And right now I'm at a place where I'm thinking that he's talking about the order of fabrication here, and that he's saying you first make the choshen, and then you make the rings, and then you put the rings in the choshen, and that's what he's trying to explain. Am I absolutely certain? No, but that seems to be the sense. So what I'm going to do without sharing the screen is see if I can go, see if I'm capable of go. Yeah, all right. So I am, able to do that. So let me go. We're looking at verse 23. So I want to go to verse 23 of how Sfaria translates this. So let me go to that place and see what he says. Okay. Right. Okay. Here's how the person who translated Sfaria translates it. Al hachoshen, and thou shalt make for the breastplate. In other words, not on it, in order to fix them on it. In other words, them being those rings, right? And it would not be correct to say that this means that they should originally be made upon it. For this, if this were so, why should it again say in this verse, and thou shalt put the two rings on the two extremities? Would they not already have been lying upon it if they had been made together with the breastplate? So it seems to me that how I've understood this is the way the translator understands it as well. It's a detail, okay? So for some reason, he's saying it doesn't get all made together. That's apparently an important detail. Exactly how important it is, I'm not sure right now, but that's how, so we are understanding this correctly, right? Do you want me to summarize again, or are you comfortable that you have an idea of what's going on? Just somebody shout out and let me know. The silence is...
move
silence
forward.
is a stench. We're good.
Yeah, move forward. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. I told you this is a lot, right? Okay. So going on, verse 24. Thank you. There are times when I really need you to let me know if you're understanding what I'm doing. So v'natata et shtei avotot hazahav. So this is why Rashi says this applies also to the chains, right? They were inserted after the choshen was made. So you shall place the two chains of gold. Literally, avot means, or these braided chains of gold, al shtei hatabaot, into the, in this case, al again means on, but I think here it means into the two rings, el tzot hachoshen, to the edge of the breastpiece. Let's take a look at Rashi on this. Okay. V'natata et shtei avatot hazahav, right? Hein sharshot gavlut. That is, this term that the Torah is using of avotot hazahav is exactly the same as what it meant when it talked about sharshot gavlut, right? Remember, he translates sharshot as referring to the chains. It means these chains that were going to affix the choshen. That's the implication of this word shoresh, means root, right? And Rashi explained that just as a root of a plant fixes it into the soil, so these chains were there to fix the choshen, affix it. Okay, so gavlut haktuvot lamala, he says, even though it's being mentioned a second time, it's referring to that same little detail that we talked about before. Velo piresh makom kvuan b'choshen. And he says, back then, when it was talking about those chains, it didn't explain where those chains had to go in the choshen. It only talked about where they went on the ephod. So that's why it's repeating it now and going into it, because now he's talking about the choshen. And in fact, you may recollect that Rashi said that back there, when we were talking about the chains and the way they had to be placed on the ephod, it was not really the place of explaining it all, but that the Torah would explain it when it talked about the fabrication of the choshen, of the breastpiece. So, achshav merafaresh lacha. But now he explains to you, sheyehe tochev otam, that he should draw them, he should pull these chains, right? But tabaot, through the rings. V'tedalacha, and you should understand, shehein harishonot, that these in fact are those chains that were mentioned before. They're not new chains. Okay. Sha'areh perek ele pekudei lo huchpalu. And he says that in fact, in case you're trying to be rigorous. You're trying to make sure you're considering all the options. And he says the compelling reason is that in a later parsha called Ela Pekudei, where it talks about, Pekudei means the accounts of the Mishkan, and it talks about the various amounts of gold, etc., that went into the fabrication of the Mishkan. It doesn't repeat the chains. It doesn't talk about the chains a second time. Huchpalu means repeated. They're not repeated. So we know it's just talking about this one set of chains. I'm not going to go back to the picture for the moment. I'm going to keep going here and see if we can cover a little more territory. So now we go. Ve'et shtei ha'avotot, right? And now he says that the ends, right, the ketsot, the ends of these chains, right, these that we're talking about. Titen al shtei ha'mishpatzot, you shall place on those, the mishbetzet, remember, refers to the squares in which the onyx stones that were on the priest's shoulders were set. And he's saying how the chains need to go there. Venatata al kitfot ha'ephod, and you shall place them then on the shoulders of the ephod, the shoulder straps, el mul panav, towards his face. Or panav could literally mean on the outside, Let me go to an illustration quickly, and just to show you again, to just help you with that piece. Here we go. This should help. Right? So the rings are going through here, and then they're getting there affixed to these pieces. Now, as I said, we discussed this already, that whether or not this actually goes into this, or whether this becomes part of that square. These are these squares that I talked about. Just to give you some detail. Okay. That's how, at least, exactly how that looked, hard to say. Let me go to this picture here. Take a look and see. This is going to be highly pixelated, so it's not really helpful. I'm sorry, that is not going to help. Here's another picture, and you can see how the whole thing is put together. Go back to the text. Let's go to Rashi. I don't think we did the Rashi in that. Okay, no, we did that already. Yes. 25. Yeah, we just did that first, right? Okay, so let's go to 25 and take a look at what Rashi says here. The Ex28, and the two ends, shall shtei ha'avotot, he says, of the two cords, those golden cords, I'll translate it that way. Shtei rashehen, their two ends, shall kol achat v'achad, of each and every one. So it could be talking about, since it's a cord, and you're doubling it up. And now what Rashi's saying is that both ends, right, are now in one place, right, on each side. Titen al shtei hamitzbatzot. You shall place on the two mishbatzot, on those two squares. Hein aktuvot lamala. Again, Rashi wants us to not be confused by the repetition that's going on here. He says those are exactly the same ones that were referred to, written above, literally written above, Bein Parshat HaChoshen, between the chapter or the paragraph that deals with the breastplate, Ufarshat HaEphod, and the paragraph that deals with the ephod, V'lo Piresh et Tzorchan, and there he did not explain why they were needed, right, their utility. Ve'et mekuman achshav mefaresh, so he didn't explain what they were needed for and their place and exactly where they went. Achshav mefaresh, but now he's explaining it, he's detailing it. Sheyitaka bahen rashei ha'avotot. He's explaining that the ends of those cords are going to be affixed to them. Ha'tchuvot the tabaot hachoshen, those same cords that are also drawn through the rings of the choshen. Leyamin ule small on the left. On the right and the left. Yamin is right, small is left. Etzel hatzavar, and here they are near the neck, the priest's neck, in other words. Shnei Rashi Sharsharot Hayimanit. Okay, so he says the two ends of the chains. Hayimanit Tokea b'mishpatzot shel yamin. So the right one he's going to affix it to the mishpetzet. It's hard for me to give you a really great translation for it. As I said, it means like a square, right? A frame, maybe a frame would be good. It's a small frame. On the right, v'chein b'shel small, and likewise on the left, shnei rashi sharsharot hasmalit, and then the two ends of the chains on the left side. V'natata hamishpatzot, and when it says you shall place them, it's referring to those small little frames. Al kitfot ha'ephod, on the shoulder pieces of the ephod. Achat bezo v'achat bezo, one on this side and one on the left. Remember, Rashi doesn't have an illustration. He's trying to just describe this and help us see if we can visualize what's going on. Nimtza'u kitfot ha'ephod, and now it results that the shoulder pieces of the ephod machazikin et hachoshen. They literally, it means they strengthen, right? They keep it firm. The choshen, the breast piece, shelo yipol, so that it shouldn't fall down. Uvahen hu talui, and it is, that is, the choshen is suspended from them. Adain sfat hachoshen hatachtona. But the problem is, we still have a problem, right? He says, nevertheless, the edge of the choshen that is on the underpart, right, still holechet uva'ah, means it goes and comes, literally it means swings, right? It's going to be swinging, the nokeshet al preso, and it's going to smack onto his, bang against his stomach, the einad vukalo yafeh, and it is not attached in a proper kind of way. It isn't nicely attached. L'chach hutzrach, and for this reason, hutzrach od shtei tabaot, we need another two rings, l'tachti to, on its bottom edge, kamoshe mefaresh b'cholech, as it's going to continue to explain. El mul panav, opposite its surface, its face. He explains the Hebrew here, shel ephod. It's talking about the front of the ephod, the outer edge of the ephod. Shelo yitin hamishpatzot be'ever haktifot, that he shouldn't put those frames on the side of the shoulder pieces, shekaplei ha'ma'il, that are the inside. So let me again, I'll finish the sentence and then go quickly to the share so that you can see what he's talking about here. Ela be'ever ha'alyon, but he needs to put it on the upper edge, sheklaplei ha'chutz, that is opposite externally, in other words, on the outside. Vahu karui al panav, and that's referred to in Hebrew as on its face, literally, means on its surface. Shel ephod, of the ephod, ki oto ever, because that side, she'eino nir'eh, that cannot be seen, that isn't visible, eino karui panim, it's never going to be called the face, the panim. So we'll stop here for the Rashi, but I am going to, let me see what I can do here. I'm going to take this and move it down here, so we know where to start next time. Okay. And then I'm going to see what I can do to put it down with the Rashi there. Okay.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
My mom wanted to ask, or had a question about Rashi. Was wondering, what was the question on?
Let me put it back on. Each word that you're looking at Rashi,
Yes.
is that he is translating what the text says, and then he gives it. I mean, is he talking about each word himself?
Okay, so if I'm understanding your question, what he's doing is he takes the first little part of the Rashi is a quote from the text, and then he comments on that text to try and explain it. Okay?
Okay, so in other words, it's the text, it's his comment, and then you're looking at his comment and helping you to decide what you.
Right, and trying to figure out exactly what he's referring to.
Okay.
Let's see here. I want to put in a bookmark on this page, and then I'm going to go out of the share. Yeah, okay. Give me a moment, and I'm going to go to show what we're talking about. All right. Here we are. Let's go to this picture. It's helpful. So what Rashi is saying, and let's see if there's some good, okay. What he's saying is that this part here is not on the inside flap. That's what he's talking about. He says it has to go on the outside. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's using the term el mul panav. Let's see what else we have here. This is another picture, right? So what he was talking about is, of course, and when he says opposite the me'il, well, you see the me'il is the robe, and you can see how part of the shoulder strap faces the me'il, faces the robe. And what he was saying was that this doesn't go on the inside, it goes on the outside. That's this last little part that we're talking about. And I'm going to stop here. And we'll stop the recording and hope that this was helpful and give you a chance to comment a little bit.